Clive, Gus, good to see you.
Morning.
Hello.
So it is officially autumn/winter 21, and you've got some goodies to show us, haven't you?
Yeah, well, if you hear anything in the background, it's because it's chucking it down here in Kendal. And we're right next to the roof here, so it sounds all right, I think. We will cover a couple of technologies in particular, one of which is this responsive technology. I think you've heard about this.
I've heard about it, but never used it. In fact, funnily enough, actually, just by complete accident, this isn't actually well planned. I've got some of your alpine hemp just here, actually, which I'm writing up the review of. But in terms of the responsive technology, no, I haven't. So please tell us more.
Well, what it is, it sounds a bit woo-woo in a way, but it's polyester fibres with minerals embedded in, okay? But what they do is those polyester fibres are woven into other fibres, such as wool, to have different properties, if you like. And those crystals, what they do is actually intercept, I think it's far infrared radiation, and reflect it back into the body. It's one of those things where in lab conditions, they've managed to demonstrate that it improves circulation. It's not like having something that's hugs you that's warm, but it actually does improve performance, if you like. And it's something that is not purely restricted to clothing. It can be in footwear, can be in all different types of clothing, base layer, insulation, whatever. So you see this, it's a proprietary system for them. You're not going to see it anywhere else, let's put it that way. So we'll go into that a bit. The other thing is the wool that they use, which is they call Tyrol Wool. It's from these alpine sheep, so it's all fairly local to the Dolomites, which again is a good thing from a sustainability point of view. For instance, this is wool that's not travelling far, and it's high in lanolin content as well, so it's very warm when wet. So you can tell, combinations of wool and responsive work quite well in British conditions, to be honest.
Yeah. So, there's certainly the warm whilst wet maxim is often difficult to achieve, because often whilst wet, you are just blooming wet, aren't you, really? But you're warmer than you would be were you to be wearing something like down anyway.
Yes.
No, totally.
Yeah, exactly.
First one and one brand new for the season is, and a good example of where we put responsive, is a set of gloves. No one likes cold hands. We've always talked about the value of having liner gloves or over gloves or gloves that we're working with or things that you interact with your tools in your rucksack. So when climbing, we've got a thin leather glove, but this time what's been done is in the back of the palm and the back of the fingers, there is a layer of wool imbued with the responsive technology to provide added insulation and basically capacity for warmer hands. So one of the things, taking the kind of the point of responsive a step further, what effectively happens is you induce something called phase dilation, which is capillary expansion. So what you've done is you've expanded all those blood vessels and allowed kind of warmer, more highly oxygenated blood to enter. So if you think about all your major veins in your arteries, your oxygenated or deoxygenated blood is going back and forth from your heart. By the time it gets to those capillaries, it's by and large lost its, the majority of its effectiveness. Phase dilation occurs and it's going into those minor blood vessels, so you're achieving a better benefit by having the technology over not having it.
And warmer hands sounds better to me, because I think that anyone who's climbed in, particularly, the Scottish winter environment, ironically in colder alpine environments, you have the benefit of the fact the gloves are actually dry, whereas in Scotland it's often the case that you'll carry multiple pairs of gloves simply because that you're going to end up with a few pairs that are saturated. So these, in terms of their lining, what do they have in terms of, say, waterproofing as well?
So they're not a waterproof glove. So I guess the holy grail.
Is there such a thing?
The warm, waterproof, durable, lightweit, indestructible glove.
Dry tooling. Dry tooling.
Well, no, exactly. Yeah. So as a contact glove, in terms of having it fitting, snugly to your hand, so there's no loose space or dead zone, so your tool feels clumsy. It's designed to have great protection, the optimal level of warmth to stop your hand freezing. Clearly, having a bigger backup, warmer pair of gloves in your arsenal is going to be key. But these could be your next to skin gloves, and you can dip in and out of mitts to climb and use your tools.
And to be honest, that's what I tended to use when, not that I've actually been up to Scotland for a couple of years because of all the mad events that have gone on. But yeah, having like a warm pair for your belay, and then actually like a lean, mean pair for the lead. That's what you want. And I completely agree. The fallacy of a pair of waterproof gloves. I mean, there's that huge design flaw that is the bit on the glove that allows you to put your hand inside of them. That no one's ever quite got around that, have they?
No, and I mean, just talking glove for a second. The other great things about this is it does come further down the wrist, so it's encompassing the palm and the lower wrist, and you've got pre-curved and reinforced fingers. So if you're looking straight into the camera there, you can see the reinforcement on the palm and the kind of the webbing of your thumb. And by having that kind of that leather, basically, you end up with a nice supple glove. So over time, these are going to become much softer, much more malleable, much more dexterous. So yeah, going to get better over time, really.
And I can also see, leashes for your wrists as well, and also just neat points, tabs to pull them on, which is always really handy when they get wet, because they sometimes gloves can end up being really cruxy just to put on when the material on the inside is damp. So we've run through the gloves and the responsive technology. Where else is it featured then?
Well, as I said beforehand, because it's a print, it's not like it's not wool itself. It's imbued in either the wool or in the face fabric. We've put it into boots and we've put it into sleeping bags. But if we're talking about kind of functional insulation when you're working, you're climbing, nothing is going to be more key than the layer that you just sling on a very cold, very wet part of your climb or your route, or just as a day-to-day functional jacket. So the place where one of the garments we put it into, which makes a lot of sense, is indeed the Belay Jacket. So the longer cut jacket with reinforcement, double zippers, but the actual insulation itself in the hood, the arms and the body is all imbued with these responsive yarns.
Yeah, so it's integrated within, well, I think it sounds like it permeates almost the whole range, or it has the potential to, at least anyway.
Yes, so it's not only the garments, it is in one of our mountaineering boots, it's in the sleeping bags, it's in some of the sleeping mats, the gloves, socks, footbeds of some of the shoes as well, and then it can be put on the back of waterproofs and in the Belay Jacket.
Do you want to tell us a bit more about the Belay Jacket? Simply because now we've covered the gloves, I'm now in a sort of Scottish winter mood, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who, especially after last winter being that classic example of a vintage season where nobody could get out because, of course, unless you lived in the Highlands, then it was against the law. So,
okay, so what we have here, so I guess typically when you're thinking of a Belay jacket, you're thinking of something that's going on over everything. It wants to be optimally light, but at the same time robust. So to that end, what you've got is a lighter weight nylon face fabric. So I don't know how much you can see from the camera, but if you contrast it with, say, the material on the shoulder yoke, the top of the hoods, the cuffs, and the hem, which you would argue are your high wear points, whether you're putting gloves into snow or you've got your rucksack rubbing perhaps, or you've got any water coming down in your hood or the back of your shoulders. This is all our PowerTex, our proprietary waterproof fabric, which is put onto those high wear zones. So not only is it ripstop to prevent any kind of excessive damage or wear, you're also getting that added protection.
Is there anything else you want to cover before we sign off?
Sure. So the other thing as well, you've got zoned insulation. So the heaviest layer of insulation comes in the body, followed by the arms and then the hood. So it's graded. So again, you're not wasting the grams. And then just as a really other nice feature, if it is going over everything, we do have the expanding hood system, which we have in our waterproof jackets, but also the Belay Jacket. So if you're using a ski helmet or a climbing helmet, that hood can expand out and go over the whole thing. And then you can cinch it down again when you don't need it.
That is the nature of the Belay Jacket for the 21st century user, because I think mine tends to get used more for the nursery run actually these days than it does for actually winter climbing. And having a helmet compatible hood can actually be quite drowning at the best of times.
But other than that, big hand pockets, a double zipper, and on the inside you've got two large dump pockets. So dare I say, even if it's being used in the rock climbing sense, you can stick your rock shoes in it.
And lest we forget, boulderers actually need bigger jackets than Himalayan mountaineers. So it's all worth bearing these things in mind.
No, totally. And again, wool. So that's the other final thing to say. It's another example of where we've used this alpine wool, these sheep native to the Dolomites in the clothing.
Brill. Gus, Clive, thanks ever so much for taking us through that. It's been really good.